Hello, hi. It's Margaret Ross here, and Keith Taylor is also with us. I'm not sure if you can actually see us on your screen. If you could send a little message through the chat if you've got problems. I'm hoping that at the moment what you can actually see is possibly the first screen of Keith's, which is Fellowship and Charter Status in the Charter Institute for IT by Keith Taylor, and possibly two little pictures of Keith and myself. Is it possible to send me the odd chat message back to say okay or not okay? Any messages from anyone? I notice we've got a lovely selection of people here, both from the UK and overseas, from Mauritius, so welcome. No messages from anybody? Could we just check that the chat is working? Could you just send a little message saying hello or just hi?
I'll be back in a moment, Margaret. I'm just going to...
Okay, no problem. At the moment, I can't see any messages at all.
Hey, Margaret, there's some messages going in the questions box.
Going into the question box, are they?
Yeah.
Ah, okay, because nothing seems going in the chat box. Now into the question box, I've got one thing that says all good. Ah, right. Hi, that's from Montessori. So this is Mauritius. Fantastic. I don't know what your weather's like there, but it's quite nice here at the moment. And hopefully you'll be able to actually see some of our other or attend some of our other webinars. Anybody else out there? No, not at the moment. The anybody come through in the chat? No, nobody comes through in the chat box either.
Using questions.
They're using questions instead. But while you're there, just mention about some of the other things that we've got. There is the webinar list of webinars on the events. So if you go to the BCS homepage, at the top, along the top line, there's a section that says events. And if you just click on those and roll down, you've got all the future events coming up. So it might be worth keeping an eye on those. Some lovely things coming up. Some of the ones that we've got, of course, we think the best one is tonight, which I don't know whether you heard that, Keith.
Yes, I just heard it.
I think the best is tonight. But we've got some exciting ones coming up. Another one that we have on the 14th, and this is about managing a virtual team, a key problem for lots of people at the moment. And that's by Carol Long, who's actually also a CEng, as well as FBCS and CEng. So this actually ties in very much with what you're hearing tonight. So she's actually gone through all those loops. So she is actually on the 14th, and that should be an interesting one. Now, we jump on a little bit then to the 23rd of April. Now, the 23rd of April is a little bit of a special day because in the UK, particularly in England, it's St. George's Day. So we've got a rather special webinar that day, and the information is actually up on the events section. And this is the immediate past president, Michael Grant. And he's going to be talking about all the things that have gone through, how his career has changed over the years, and how you can actually make best use of situations as you progress through, and also how you can get into volunteering and getting a lot out of volunteering. I mean, you can belong to an organization and just pay the money, which is quite good. But the more you get involved, the more you get out of it, and the more fun you get out of it as well, and the better networking you get. So this is all issues that will come up in Michael Grant's talk. And there's some fun. I've seen his slides, and there's some very, very interesting slides. It's a slightly longer webinar. It will probably be about an hour and a half. But again, that's all sort of set up there. So at that stage, I think that as far as the other ones that we've actually organised, is linked in with the green IT. Now, again, this is picked on a particular day, and this is in June. All full details on the BCS website. And that's the 18th of June, and that is the National Clean Air Day. So we have a speaker that is actually talking about how you actually investigate and measure the clean air and how it's sort of changing. Now, in fact, in our rather unusual situation worldwide that we're in fact, it's quite possible that air is actually considerably cleaner because there is less traffic, less planes, so there is issues there. I did receive an email today from a local authority suggesting that people shouldn't run barbecues because, again, barbecues is one of the things that generates particles in the air, in fact, more harmful particles than actually planes or cars. So they're saying at the moment, with a lot of people that are staying indoors, particularly with health problems, please not to have barbecues. So if you're thinking of that, might be an issue to sort of reconsider possibly. But that is a very exciting day to tie in with Clean Air Day. We've got a few other things that we're planning, but we're currently working on them. There's an e-learning one, very much about how to run courses, etc. And this one, hopefully, should be useful to a lot of people. Other things that we have along the line is for the Women in Engineering Day coming up. Again, we're organising at the moment, still not fully planned yet, but again, a series of speakers talking about issues that have been particularly useful of how they moved on through their own careers and the range of work women can do. On the other issues, when we mentioned about e-learning, we are very busy collecting abstracts for the 25th, the silver anniversary of the annual Inspire conference. Now, this is actually run as a combination of the e-learning specialist group and the quality specialist group. Now, the aim of this is to look at case studies, peer research, etc., to do with e-learning. And we're very keen to encourage more presentations for particularly how e-learning is being used in this really awkward time, from anything from primary school right through to postgraduate, as to be used in industry, because suddenly e-learning and working this way is suddenly something we've all had to adapt to. So that this will be interesting. The idea with this one, you put a 2-page abstract, maximum 6 references, and say what it's about, goes to 3 reviewers. If they're happy with it, then you then put forward your slides with the audio attached to each slide, just in case the technology fails. It's actually planned for the 9th of July. And this has actually been run as a webinar, e-conference, totally free. After the conference, or even before if you wish, you actually can write out full papers. Again, these will be reviewed. If the full papers are accepted by the reviewers and the reviewing panel, then it will go into an e-conference proceedings. And again, totally free. We've already got some papers coming in from overseas, so we're very keen to get a sort of variety coming in. Just to mention something else very quickly before we get going, is we have various competitions going, BCS competitions, and they're all P2P. In other words, from primary school right through to postgraduate at university, and they all have open classes. Now there's one for the e-learning, one for the green IT, and one for the animation and games. Full details of these are on the appropriate BCS specialist group web pages. The only thing is the dates have been adjusted, so we're just waiting for the dates to be modified. They are actually now set for May and June. But if anybody would like more details of the exact dates, I can send them to you. The theme for all 3 is fairly similar. It's to tie in with the this year's science year, Science and Technology year, which is actually the theme of diverse planets. So the green is how green technology could help the planet and help the whole society. The e-learning is again how you could use e-learning to make people more aware to help society and the planet. And the animation and games is again how you could create a game or actually make a game or a YouTube entry of how this can be done for a new computer game to actually raise the awareness of society, using IT for society and the planet itself and the whole environment. Full details of this, as I said, are on the appropriate websites. Now, with the entries for those goes through the schools, but also there's an open class. Now, that can be entered by a BCS member and a team of any size, basically. So that team could be colleagues that you work with, or that team could be your family. So if you've got some small children, you come up with an idea. How about the small children producing the pictures, because all your entries for everything except part of the animation and games is actually a single PowerPoint. So what you're trying to do is come up with an original idea and you're going to try and sell it on a single PowerPoint. And if you're going to do a team entry with your family, small members of your family could do some very, very interesting pictures. One of the winners of one of these competitions a couple of years ago was very good. A girl from China, a student from China, and what she actually had was the idea of a game, and it was called The Last Mermaid. The picture itself was a rather sad mermaid sitting on a rock, surrounded by lots of rubbish in the ocean around her. And the game was very much to make people aware of the harm that's done. So this is just a few of the things that you might like to think about. Now, Keith, is there anything that you'd like to mention at the moment?
No, I just wondered whether we were necessarily going to wait until past, or I mean, you said 5 for 5:30, didn't you, in the original notice?
Well, it's 5 to give people a chance to log in and get settled, 5:30 to kick off.
Okay.
One of the things, just to actually have a look and see if there's any more questions that have come up. No. And see if there's any more things in the chat. And the answer, I think, is no. And if we check up how many people have we got, certainly 9 people at the moment. Again, coming from a variety. So very much to welcome you. How, Joe, can we actually unmute the people and then remute them?
Hey, yeah, we can do. We need to take everyone off mute.
Just to see if anybody would like to raise any points for a few minutes. Can you do that, or should I do that?
Everyone's been unmuted.
If I
Now
do
they've got to take their mics off mute themselves.
If I hit the all button for the attendees against the microphone,
I've already done. So it's all done.
it's all done.
Yeah, so if they want to take their mics off mute at this point, they can. It's up to them.
So if you'd like to just say something about maybe even where you are.
Hi, Margaret. Jackie here.
Hello, Jackie. Hi.
Hi, I'm at home.
That's a very sensible place to be.
Yeah, been home for 3 weeks.
Oh, my goodness, yes. Well, mind you, it's the same. We've put ourselves into self-isolation for health reasons. But it's rather nice actually looking out at nice views. Have you found anything particularly interesting that's been going on in your area?
I've seemed to have spent an awful lot of time on Zoom. Because I'm involved with our local Toastmasters groups, and I've been helping them set up Zoom meetings. So we've been running Zoom meetings. We've had a couple of speech contests on Zoom.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
Yes, it's quite complicated. I think we're all becoming Zoom experts now.
I think I'll actually be having a chat to you afterwards, if I could, or if you could email me.
Sure.
because I want to actually gain some expertise with Zoom, and I haven't tried organising anything in Zoom yet. So it's margaret.ross@bcs.org.uk.
I think I've got your email, Margaret.
That'd be great, thank you. And now, how about in Mauritius? Would you like to say
Good.
anything to us? Hi there.
Hi, Margaret. Hi, everyone. I'm doing good. So same like you. So we're at home working since 3 weeks.
How easy is it for people to stay at home and get shopping, etc.?
Actually, everything was closed over 2 weeks, so we couldn't like survive. So the government was very strict. We've got 9 persons that are dead. So we are now recovering. So around 244 positive cases, and we are recovering a bit quickly. So everything is closed, like I was saying. So only supermarkets was open the weekend, and then probably they will be closed again this week.
So that sometimes it's open, sometimes it's closed. On the
It was closed.
supermarket, is there much food and items in the supermarket?
Not really, but there are some places, but not everywhere. So it's a bit difficult. But so far we are getting our basic needs for everyday life.
Oh, that's good. I think everybody's having the same sort of problems.
Yes, I think everywhere. Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah. Is anybody else that's wants to have a word about how things are progressing in their area? Bob, are you there? No. Looking down on our list. Anybody else unmuted? Bob?
Hi.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Hi. How's things going in your area?
It's been a good opportunity for the community to build itself by helping each other. And we've formed a lot of WhatsApp groups where people are sharing food, ideas, schooling, homeschooling packs, and it's proved very popular. And I'm hoping that it will enable us and some of the people in the streets around me to think about working at home in future rather than commuting.
Well, that's certainly going to save and possibly improve the environment.
Yes.
I think certainly the one thing I miss more than anything is going shopping for myself and being able to choose things.
Yes. Yeah, we're relying on delivery services.
Yeah. At the moment, I think a lot of people are getting problems where you get a lot of not exactly what you order. Is it
substitutions?
Who else is actually on with unmuted at the moment? That's
we've got, I think it's Tenuri, is it? I can hear some background noise coming in.
With feedback.
Is that feedback? Tenuri, where are you?
Hi.
Hi, whereabouts are you phoning from, dialing in from?
She's muted her microphone now.
Ah, no. You come back again.
We've lost the interference.
Sonora, whereabouts are you speaking from? No, I can see you're unmuted. Your microphone is live. No, it's not. It was live. But I think we've got a variety of people coming from a variety of places. Anybody else from other places? I'm from the south of England, so I'm at Bournemouth, which is in the middle of basically the middle of the south coast of England. So if you can't go any further, in fact, if I cross the road, I'll actually be in the sea. Well, mind you, I'd have to climb down a cliff, but I would be in the sea. So I'm as far south as you can go, really. Anyone else? Where else is anybody else from?
Well, I'm from Winchester, not a long way away.
So you're a bit up, halfway to London, really.
Well,
Enrica?
Hi.
Hi there. Where are you speaking from?
I'm here in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia now, but I'm originally from the Philippines.
Ah, and
Hi,
how are
Mr.
you?
Keith.
Yes.
Yes, I'm just saying hi to Mr. Keith also.
Hello there. Hi.
Yeah, your question is, Margaret, you were asking.
Mm-hmm.
How are things here?
Well, certainly with mine, the weather is lovely. It's beautifully and sunny, a little bit windy, and it's very quiet. You can hear, with no traffic, you can hear a lot of the birds. In fact, we can almost hear the plants growing and the flowers growing. So it's so in one way, it's actually very nice, apart from the horrendous things that are going on all around us.
Yes, I understand, Miss Margaret. And I also just a little this morning I saw the message from the Queen and it was really inspiring. So I think
Yes.
the British people are really very strong at this how do you call this pandemic that we're having.
Where are you speaking from?
I'm here in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia?
Yes.
Jeddah.
Fantastic. That is wonderful. Right. So we have we are genuinely an international webinar then. Certainly, when I mentioned about the BCS competitions, e-learning, green IT, and the animation games, I've already started getting some, and I've had some interest from China and also from Saudi Arabia as well. No, sorry, not Saudi Arabia, UAE. I've had some from the UAE and from Mauritius, as well as UK, and so hopefully we'll get some more coming in, because it's really nice to have as many countries as possible participating. Any other people would like to say something about where they're from or what's going on in their area? No? Okay. Well, I think
Start, Keith.
London. South England, the best part.
well, London is and the south is certainly, we've got better weather down the south of England than we have further up and into Scotland, which have had much more rain, much colder weather in the last few weeks. So I think this is rather nice. I had a lovely view a couple of days ago when it was sunny. Outside, I'm in a block of flats, and there's a lawn, grass lawn outside. And at the moment, there's lots of daisies growing up, little white flowers, the daisies. And something I remember doing when I was a very small child, there was a young lady going along with 3 small children, one of which was in a pram. And the children stopped and they were leaning across into the garden and they were picking the daisies. And they were making the daisies into necklaces, bracelets, and they were wearing them round their head, like a sort of a band, headband, effectively. And they were really enjoying themselves for ages, and wearing those.
Oh, sorry, we suddenly got muted then, but I think we're unmuted again.
Ah, right, okay. So we saw this family surrounded with all these daisy chains. We used to make them as a child. You have a little pin and you'd make a hole partly at the end of one of the stems and you'd push the next flower through. So it was quite fun to make. And it reminded me of a song. I think some of the maybe more, I was going to try and think of the word, people more of my age would remember. Does anybody remember a song that was talking about going to San Francisco with flowers in your hair? Does anybody remember that? It was a pop tune. Yeah.
I tell you what, I'll put the rest of
If
them
not,
on
when the webinar's over, have a little search around the internet, and it's quite a nice little song. It was way back in the 60s. And it was a time when the flower power was people wandering around, particularly in San Francisco, with flowers in their hair, and they were handing flowers to anybody they met. So when the webinar's finished, if you feel like something slightly different, do a search for, I can't quite remember the title. It was something like Going to San Francisco.
If you're going to San Francisco, I think.
That's it. If you're going to San Francisco with flowers in your hair, or words to that effect. So, you know, have a little listen to that. Now, I think we're just about kicking off. So I think at this stage, probably, does anybody else want to say anything? Otherwise, I think we'd like to mute you, everybody. Any last comments,
I mute. I put all the attendees on mute because everyone's joining.
Fantastic. So everyone's muted. And that will cut
questions in the box.
Okay, so if you're going to actually send things, either send them on the questions or on the chat. And every now and again, I'll keep an eye on those and have a word and interrupt Keith and actually pass on the questions to him. And this will probably save some of the feedback. I think at this stage, we can think about starting. Keith, if you're ready.
Yeah, I'm just ready. I was just looking for your song, but there's no hurry.
Oh, have you got it?
I don't know yet. I'm just looking to see if I've got it.
Well, while Keith's looking, we're very, very lucky to have Keith because he's fantastic. Some of the things that isn't mentioned down in the list, I've seen his slides, but he's been a fantastic member of the Hampshire branch committee for I don't know how many years. We're going 15, 20 years, something like this. And he's actually particularly responsible for looking after a lot of the careers events. So Keith, together with his colleague Ivan Carter, who himself was a founder member of the BCS, they're actually dealing very much with the careers events. So we actually send people along to the careers, telling them about all the joys of actually having a career within IT and computing. Not only does Keith get involved with this, but he's a key player when it comes to membership and people actually progressing to the different levels of membership. So hence, that's why we've got him today doing this fantastic talk. Now, Keith.
It was Scott McKenzie, by the way.
Scott McKenzie.
Scott McKenzie, if you're going to San Francisco, yeah.
Are you going to play us a quick bar from it?
I could do. It won't be terribly hi-fi. But...
Well, as far as I think, we've got about half a minute, so otherwise it's something for people to do afterwards. Now it's gone all too quiet now.
Did you not hear that?
No, not very clearly. So I think it's an exercise for everybody afterwards.
Okay.
Anyway, thanks a lot. So in which case I'll pass across to Keith. Thank you very much, and thank you for doing this webinar.
Can you see the title slide right, Margaret?
I can, yes. Okay.
So this is going to cover chartered status and fellowship. I'm going to talk about CITP. I'm going to talk about Engineering Council, chartered status, and then I'm going to finish up with fellowship. So Margaret's already mentioned a little bit about me. I used to work for IBM most of my life as a designer and a technical guru and a product planner. I am a CITP a chartered engineer and a fellow, but I have to say that I got the CITP via the sort of backdoor route where at a certain time, I can't remember quite when it was, 2005 maybe, we all suddenly found that we were entitled to CITP if we'd been in the BCS for a certain time. So I haven't gone through the proper process for that. I retired from IBM, and as Margaret says, I do voluntary work for the BCS and have worked on appeals panels and other things, and I'm on the Hampshire branch committee. So when I went to university many years ago, I obviously learned a lot of technical skills, which is the thing that you do at university, and a certain amount of autonomy. And the thing, when I left university, I thought to myself, well, this is good. I know all the things I need to know now. I can go and work in industry. But of course, there are a whole list of things, as you can see here, which I hadn't even touched on. And so even for membership level of the BCS, you need a certain amount of professionalism as well as technical skills and autonomy. And the professionalism comes with working in a real job, really. You don't really learn that at university, I don't think. And then as time goes on, you expand to hopefully have good communication with other people. Business awareness is very important, but something, again, that I wasn't taught at university. And then influence and innovation, which of course come also from experience. So when you've got all those things, then you may be eligible for the chartered level, which I'm going to talk about. And then finally, leadership and eminence are things that you would normally expect to use at fellowship level. So we've got the three different levels here: membership level, which is BCS, the chartered level, which is CITP, IEng or CEng, and then the fellowship level, which is FBCS. Now, along with those, we've also got these SFIA levels. Now, SFIA stands for the Skills Framework for the Information Age, and I'm going to talk a bit more about that in a minute. But the levels go from level 4 for the membership level up to level 7 for the fellowship level. Now, a little bit about the history of professional membership. And I may be slightly off with my dates here, but I know when I was still at college, about 1967, anyone who was working in computers could actually be a member of the BCS. And there wasn't any sort of professional requirements for it. But then by the time I'd graduated, the BCS had introduced a requirement to have a degree in either maths or computer science. And because my degree was in engineering, I wasn't eligible for that. So I did try going through the BCS exams route. I passed part 1, but before I'd managed to pass part 2, the rules were relaxed a bit in the 1970s, and I was admitted on part 1 alone, I guess. And then they were gradually relaxed so that now people with just the IT experience but not having any exams can become members. But this has left a need to reintroduce some sort of chartered status to prove, if you like, that you've got some more knowledge or qualifications. And that has to have some sort of test or evaluation with it, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So just talking about the MBCS to start with, MBCS, as I said, you need to be SFIA level 4, and I'll mention what that is in a minute. And working in IT, you have to have a professional approach. And once you've got those two things, then as long as you continue working in IT, you can be a member of the BCS. Now, once you're a member, then you might start thinking about professional registration, which is what this talk's mainly about. Why might you want that? Well, it's a demonstration of the fact you've got a professional attitude. It's valued by employers, some employers more than others. I found that where I used to work at IBM, I didn't get much recognition for it, but other places, the military maybe, they get a lot more recognition for it. Nevertheless, you still get some benefits from it, even if your employer doesn't recognize it too much. If you're self-employed, you probably be more regarded in your field if you've got it. And certainly the last one here, this self-esteem, I found that I feel much better about my job and my career, the fact that I've got the chartered engineering and the fellowship to some extent. So I mentioned SFIA a couple of times. What's SFIA? Well, SFIA is the skills framework for the information age, as I said, and it's been around for, I don't know, 15 years maybe. It was originally founded by the BCS and these other institutes here, and it's really a set of skills needed for information technology. It's now up to SFIAplus version 7. Now, the plus bit is what the BCS have added. So the SFIAplus is a little bit more advanced, more detailed than the ordinary SFIA, and it's now got to version 7, so it's had quite a lot of revisions. Now, I'll show you the format of it in a moment, but it's got 102 different skills, which is a lot of different skills, all of which are separate IT skills. And those skills come at 7 generic levels. So you might think there were 7 times 102 different levels available, but that's not quite like that, because there are some that are not populated, as it were. So there are only 394 different levels and skills identified. There's still quite a lot, of course, but that's the number there are. And I'll show you the framework now. So here's an excerpt. This is only an excerpt from the list of skills. And you can see down the left-hand side, we've got a column that's entitled CITP Specialisms, Strategy and Architecture, Change and Transformation, Development and Implementation, and so on. So those are the 6 main headings of the SFIA structure, and they're also the 6 specialisms that CITP can be awarded the certificate of those specialisms. So if we look at the top one, Strategy and Architecture, then that's got about 25 or so subsections to it, sub-skills, and there are some other headings in there: information strategy, advice and guidance, and so on. The one I've highlighted there, business strategy and planning, demand management. And if you look across the right-hand side, you'll see that only has levels 5 and 6 associated with it. So if you were working in demand management, then if you were truly doing that, you would be automatically at level 5 or 6, which would entitle you to become a chartered professional. Some of the other skills go much further. The information content publishing one just above it goes from 1 to 6, as you can see. Some of them go up to 7. So depending on the skills, they have a variety of different levels that you can be at. The next section down, change and transformation, I'll talk a bit more about that in just a moment. In fact, here. So the change and transformation specialism has a lot of management in it. The top section here is all about managing projects, portfolio management, program management, and you find quite a lot of fellows would be in that sort of category, program management. A bit further down, there's a different sort of management. That's management of assets and requirements. And that probably wouldn't go up to fellowship level. That would be more chartered professional level. So as I say, the SFIAplus skill codes, there's 102 different skill codes and 17 subcategories and so on. The bit that I want to point out to you on this slide is that these skill codes should include all those working in IT. That means that if you're not in one of these skill codes, then you may not be working in IT. For example, if you were doing CAD/CAM design of racing cars, there isn't a skill code for you, and neither would you be classed as working in IT. You might be using IT, but you're not actually working on the CAD/CAM tools. You'd be using the tools, which is a subtle difference. So you really need to be working in IT for any of these professional qualifications, or indeed to be a member of the BCS, but particularly for these chartered qualifications. Okay, next one. So there are 7 different levels of SFIAplus, as we've just seen in that table. The first 4 are described as follow, assist, apply, and enable. And those are the ones that are below the level we need. Level 5 is ensure and advise. That's the level that we need to be a chartered engineer or CITP. And then 6 and 7 are more associated with fellowship, but of course you can be in those levels and be chartered. So you have to be level 5 or above to obtain CITP or Engineering Council, and 6 or 7 for fellowship. On to the next one. This is a screenshot from the online system. Now, you can get online yourself on the BCS website. If you sign on to the BCS website, you can see all this detail of what the different levels are. This is a summary of level 5 in generic terms, so it includes autonomy, influence, complexity, knowledge, and business skills. So those are the 5 key areas that you need to be proficient in at level 5, and indeed most of the levels have got the same set, but they just kind of get more critical as you go through them. So you can read those later. I haven't got time to go through it now, but you can see that the business skills, there's a lot of business skills there, And it's very important, particularly, well, both for chartered and chartered engineer and CITP, that you have got business skills. We do check on that during the interviews. So I'm going to now start talking specifically about the CITP and the criteria for CITP. So the level that you need, I've said several times, is SFIA level 5, and you need both skills in your own particular area, and you need breadth of knowledge. You need experience, and then you're going to have to get through an interview. Everyone has to go through an interview for CITP certification. Now, there used to be a test called the breadth of knowledge test, and I did years ago. I took it myself, and it's pretty difficult, I can tell you. But fortunately, they've now abandoned that. You still need breadth of knowledge, but it's evaluated in a different way. You need experience, and as I say, there's an interview as well. So the criteria for CITP, firstly, knowledge and experience gained through formal and informal education. So this is mainly education and training, can be on the job training or Microsoft qualifications or whatever. So that's about fundamental principles. Then the second one is the ability to perform an extensive range and variety of complex technical and or professional work activities. So that's the ability to actually apply your knowledge in a meaningful way. And the third one is this breadth of knowledge. So this is the one that used to have a test but doesn't anymore. So that's evidenced by assessment, either when you apply in your CV or an interview. So you can be asked questions both on your specialist area and on your breadth of knowledge. I have to say that it's probably a lot easier now to pass the breadth of knowledge aspect than it was when we had a separate test on it, which was very stressful. So to apply, you put your current CV in, you put maybe also a personal statement if your CV isn't detailed enough, and you need to include, as I just said, your evidence of your breadth of knowledge. So that could be the fact, maybe if you just say you did a degree, then that would perhaps indicate that you've got a breadth of knowledge. You need to pay. I don't quite know how much it is. It's usually around £100, I think. And then details of one or more supporters who can validate your application. I've got a few hints and tips about your CV here. Now, this is not just about CITP CVs, it's about any sort of CV. So you need to be positive about your qualities, but don't just put the standard, good team player stuff in. You need to have some evidence of how you've obtained your skills. You need to state the details of your responsibilities. In the case of CITP, you need it for the last, well, at least 3 years, but preferably 5 years. Include responsibilities, evidence of your breadth of knowledge, as I've said. List all your qualifications, including business training and other certifications. State distinctions or awards. That could be an internal award at your company or something like that. Membership of any other professional bodies or on committees. Lists of conferences you've attended and preferably presented at, publications, patents if you've got any patents, and a few notes about hobbies. We don't want great details, but sometimes it's nice to see the broader picture of what people do. So that's just a few general hints about CVs. As I say, that could apply to both Engineering Council applications and CITP and even fellowship. So the two stages of the CITP evaluation, the first one is you put the written application in, and that's evaluated by 2 assessors, and they're looking for experience at SFIAplus level 5, as I've said before, breadth of IT knowledge as well, and all applicants must show they can communicate and work. That would mainly be during the interview, of course. And then there's a second part, is the actual interview, which is about a 45-minute interview. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So there's a note at the bottom here that CITP is awarded for 5 years before renewal is required. These days, I think what's happening is that you have to put in your education plans and the education that you've taken in the last 5 years at the end of the 5-year period, so that you can be re-evaluated to make sure you've still got the technical skills needed. And there's a similar thing for engineering council coming in as well, that you need to keep your education plans up to date. So that's the 2 stages of CITP. The breadth of knowledge, I've mentioned this already, I won't go right through this slide, but there is a note about legal and social and ethical factors coming in here as well. And so that's part of what you need to know about IT in general. So you need to know a little bit about that, not a huge amount, but a little bit. And as I said before, business qualifications. And the last point at the bottom of the slide is important. You should reference commercial use and maintenance of information technology, including management techniques and information security. So there's lots of different areas that are associated with business objectives as well as a normal technical side of it. So the 6 specialisms, I mentioned these earlier: strategy and architecture, change and transformation, development and implementation, delivery and operation, skills and quality, and relationships and engagement. So you can opt for one of those 6 areas as your specialism, and you will be interviewed by someone who is skilled in in that area that you've opted for. So the assessors, I'm not a CITP assessor myself, but the assessors are particularly skilled in one or more of those areas, and they're allocated to you depending on which of the 6 specialisms you say you want to get certified in. The interview itself, you'd be expected to provide a short presentation in your area of specialism. The interview is by 2 assessors, of course, at least one of whom will have this knowledge and experience of your specialism. And you should demonstrate both effective communication, competence in IT, depth of specialist knowledge, and this broad knowledge and understanding. Now, there's a note at the end here. This is an interesting note. It says assessors are encouraged to take a holistic view of the applicant. Well, what does that mean? It means that if you're particularly good, say, in your depth of knowledge, that they might be a bit more lenient about your breadth of knowledge, and vice versa. If you're particularly broad in your knowledge and understanding of IT, then you might not have to go to the same depth of specialist knowledge. So there is a certain amount of give and take in the way that you're judged. So one of the particular specialisms you might look for, part of strategy and architecture, is the information security area. And you can see that's got a wide range of different levels from 3 to 7. And we'd be looking for level 5 or above there. So you'd be expected to be quite a high-powered security expert to obtain CITP in that area, because it's particularly relevant at the moment, of course. So that's just one example of an area. So just as a summary for CITP, the applicant needs to be working at SFIAplus level 5. They need to have autonomy, influence and business skills, breadth of knowledge. They need to have their specialist IT knowledge, and they need to have been doing these jobs for 3 of the last 5 years. So you can't just suddenly apply if you've just started doing your IT job. You have to have been doing it for at least 3 years out of the last 5. I think that's the last, yes, that's the last slide of CITP. Margaret, do we want to ask for any questions now, or shall we wait until the end?
Nobody's come through with questions so far, so in which case...
Right. I'll press on then.
Yes.
There are a few questions actually in that question thing.
Oh, are
there? The question bit?
One. Yeah.
Can't read that one. Can a copy of the presentation be sent to all the webinar attendees?
Yes, I can arrange that. Well, I can certainly provide a copy of it. I don't know how to send it to all the attendees, but I'm sure we can manage that.
Otherwise, maybe we could put it up on the website, say the Hampshire website.
Yes, that would be fine. Yeah.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll now go on to talk about engineering council, and as chartered engineer and IEng. So there's a note here that the BCS no longer awards Science Council registration. I wasn't aware of that until recently, but apparently not. So engineering council. Sorry, Margaret. Yes.
Can I add into this one? I've also got charter scientist. So there was a very small number of BCS members that were charter scientists, and there was various different reasons why the BCS decided not to continue actually dealing with the science council, the CSci, charter scientist.
Yeah.
So in fact, I wanted to retain my charter scientist, so I had to actually join another professional body in addition, so I could actually get monitored there. And with that one, you have to actually resubmit basically every year to prove you're being kept up to date. Thank you.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Margaret. Yeah. So what are the roles of the Engineering Council and the BCS in all this? So the Engineering Council has been around for donkey's years, and it grants licenses to professional engineering institutions such as the BCS to allow them to assess candidates for inclusion on the National Register of Professional Engineers and Technicians. And of course, that register doesn't just include IT people, it includes mechanical engineers, civil engineers, aeronautical engineers, all sorts of different engineers. The Engineering Council monitors the assessment process to make sure that the standard is upheld by all of the professional institutions which help them award Engineering Council professional qualifications. They provide a thing called the UK spec, which is the standard to which engineers are measured for professional registration. And indeed, we work so closely to it that when we do interviews, we ask the applicant to have the UK spec open in front of them so that they can check what we're talking about, basically. So that's the role of the BCS and the Engineering Council. Now, to get chartered engineer or incorporated engineer, the first starting point is nominally a qualification in engineering. So if you've got a master's in engineering or possibly a bachelor's degree in engineering, if you're going for CEng, then that would qualify you for that. But a lot of people don't have an accredited qualification, and so they go through the experience review, which I'll talk about in a minute, or there are a couple of other routes which I'll mention as well. You need to be working at SFIA level 5 again, as I said, for CITP, and it has to be in an engineering subject. I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. You have to also go through an interview similar to the CITP interview, and if that's all goes well, then you're awarded either CEng or IEng, and I'll talk a little bit about the difference between those two. So the Engineering Council criteria, has the applicant got academic qualifications? And as it says also down the bottom here that you can submit a technical report or apply for exemption. We get very few people go down that route now because they normally have this equivalent experience, which I'll talk about in a minute. Have they been working at SFIA level 5? Yes. Can they apply engineering methods in their job? So you can't just be any IT job. If you're on a helpline or something, you might be applying engineering methods, but you might not. So you have to actually be doing things that are looking for problems and applying engineering methods to solve them. Do they have creative, innovative skills? That's the thing that particularly for CEng you need. Are they committed to professional standards? So those are the main requirements. Now, the second one of those, have they been working at SFIA level 5 or not, is a BCS requirement. And the reason it's only a BCS requirement is obviously if you're trying to be a mechanical engineer, CEng, or a civil engineer, then you wouldn't be working in IT at all. But on the other hand, we wouldn't be able to award it. We can only award the professional membership in IT areas. So that's why we insist you've got to be working in SFIA and at level 5. So here's another example of an engineering job, system design, typical engineering job in system development. And you can see system design goes 4, 5, 6 different, 3 different levels. So you could well be at level 5 in doing that. You could be doing software design. You could be doing lots of different jobs. But it's possible, perhaps testing here, it might not be sufficient on its own. If you were just doing routine testing, you probably wouldn't be working at a high enough level, and you may not be doing anything innovative. You may be just turning the handle on a routine set of tests. So you need to show that you're doing a real engineering job. Now, as I mentioned just now, a lot of people don't have the prerequisite degrees. And so in 2011, the Engineering Council suggested that all the awarding institutions, including the BCS, consider what's called an experience route. So there's a number of reasons for that. You might be a senior engineer who doesn't want to go through all the other methods of technical report or whatever. And other reasons, overseas candidates who haven't got the right accredited degrees. Excuse me. So that was introduced. I'll just have a drink. Now, if the applicant doesn't have the right accredited degree, the assessors must use the experiential route, and 2 assessors have to agree whether the applicant passes or not. If the applicant passes, then the rest of the review goes on normally. If they don't pass, then the applicant would be told that they have to go down one of the other routes, like the technical report route. So what is this experiential route? Well, it's a review of a number of different areas of the applicant's application. Have they got formal academic qualifications? Do they have professional certificates? Do they have other technical training? Do they apply fundamental principles in their job? And how long have they been doing that? Do they have other people that rely on their technical skills? Have they done conferences? And is there any other evidence of initiative or academic ability? So there's a number of different areas. They're all scored independently, and the overall pass score is 50%. There's no minimum pass score for any one question, so you can have lots of experience in the middle here, or you can have some formal academic qualifications, or any combination of the two. Both IEng and CEng applicants go through this, but the IEng applicants are marked a bit less critically. And as I say, failure to pass means that you must go down a different route, such as the technical report route. So having got through that, you then go on to the interview stage. The interview is by 2 assessors who themselves have to have Engineering Council registration, of course. It lasts 45 to 60 minutes, and it's normally using similar conferencing software to the ones that we're using now. You need to provide specific evidence for all of the areas that the UK spec determines. So we'll go through those in a moment. If you're applying for chartered engineer, you'll need to demonstrate innovation and development skills and team leadership. If you're going for incorporated engineer, you just have to show that you have some management skills, but not necessarily leadership. So these are some of the areas, they're not quite all of the areas that you go through for the UK spec. So there's this innovative development, again, that's for the chartered engineer. Apply theoretical and practical methods, identify potential projects. That's quite an important one. You have to be shown that you yourself have thought, this might be a good chance to improve our system, and identify the project yourself. So it's quite difficult to show that. And provide leadership, bring out continuous improvement. You can read them all down. There's quite a lot of different things that you have to go through, including safety, health and safety, code of conduct, sustainable development, and there's one on ethics at the end as well, and carry out CPDs. So there's about 20 different areas you need to demonstrate. At the end of the interview, we as assessors go through all your answers and decide whether they've met the criteria, and if all of them meet the criteria, then you are awarded either the IEng or the CEng. And again, there's a little bit of a holistic view here. If you're very strong in one area and not so strong in another one, well, there's a bit of scope for toing and froing. If you do get awarded Chartered Engineer, you then are eligible for European Engineer, EURENG, which, because we're in the process of leaving the EU, might be something that you wish to apply for quite quickly. There's also another international recognition which is recognized in Hong Kong and the Far East, which is INTPE, International Professional Engineer. The differences between IEng and CEng, the accredited qualification is different. For IEng, you only need a master's degree, but for CEng, you only need a bachelor's degree. For CEng, you need a master's degree. The CEng particularly mentions innovation and development, which the IEng doesn't. And I mentioned about leadership. There's a leadership thing as well for CEng. I think we've talked about all that. You can, of course, look at the UK spec yourself on the Engineering Council website. So it's easy enough to see what all the criteria are. So that's the end of the CEng and IEng. Have we got any questions come up on that, or shall I carry on?
No other questions I've seen so far, but if I can mention about the EURENG, particularly you need to have a CEng. As long as you've got CEng, then you can actually put in an application to the BCS or to any of the other professional institutions. So you could do it through the Maritime, etc. And that will actually, you will then apply. You send in basically a CV with some further information, and it's judged. And if it's successful, you become EURENG. That can interview you, and occasionally people have been called for an interview, maybe in Brussels or Geneva, but it's very rare. Normally the interview you have for CEng sort of carries you forward. Certainly EURENG is not understood in the UK, but it is very well understood in mainland Europe, particularly in Germany. So if bearing in mind that changes between UK and the rest of Europe, it might be very wise to acquire your EURENG straight away. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Margaret. So now finally I'm going to talk about fellowship, and note that fellowship isn't by itself a chartered status. You can be a fellow and a CEng, of course, but you have to be one of the other chartered statuses to be a chartered fellow. So the general statement about fellowship is that they demonstrate leadership in the profession, typically have a minimum of 5 years practical experience in IT, hold a senior position, or have an established reputation of eminence or authority in the field of IT. And they need to be supported by one or more individuals of fellowship level or equivalent. They don't actually have to be fellows of the BCS, although if you're nominated, I think you have to be nominated by a BCS fellow. I'll talk about nomination in just a second. So here's the diagram for fellows. It's a little bit different from the others. So you start off at the bottom left here, either with a nomination or an application. You can just go it alone and put in an application for fellowship, or somebody else in the BCS who is already a fellow can nominate you. And that's a good way to go if you can, if they know you. Of course, they've got to know you. And Margaret very kindly nominated me years ago for fellowship. And I think that was a good step up. So now once you've been nominated or you're applying yourself, there are 3 different routes or 3 different criteria that you can apply through: seniority, authority, and eminence. And you can do it on any one of those. You don't have to do it on all 3 by any means. You normally, on seniority, you need to be at level 7, Sophia. On eminence and authority, you can be at 6 or 7, but you need to show either your authority or your eminence. And I'll show you the flow chart in a moment, but you don't often get interviewed for fellowship. It's not part of the routine process, but you might be asked to be interviewed if it's a marginal case. So here's the flow chart. So after the initial or during the initial review, it's possible that just one reviewer can be so impressed by your level of authority or whatever it is that they can award you FBCS straight away in just a single review, but they can't decline you. So if they're not sure, they can pass it on to a second reviewer, and that second reviewer can either award it, or they can decline you, or they can interview you. They can, by the way, the second reviewer can only decline you if the first reviewer was obviously not very favourable. So really, it takes two people to decline you. And if they're not sure, they go on to interview, or they can award it straight away. So normally people are awarded at the first or second review here, but a few of them come through to interview, and occasionally I do interviews for fellowship. Most people do get through the interview, but I have to say there are one or two people who, instead of applying for membership at BCS, think, oh, this looks like a good idea, I'll apply for fellowship instead. And they're really working at quite a low level. So there are a few people who do get declined. So the criteria, and these are just examples. So for the seniority criteria, if you've got 50 or more people reporting to you, and not directly, but directly and indirectly, then that's a good sign that you're at a high enough level of seniority. If you're an international expert in your field, then the chances are that you'd be admitted on authority. And if you're doing a very or fairly senior job, say as a government advisor, or even a very high level BCS job, although you'd probably need more than just being in the BCS. But if you're on BCS and other international committees, for example, you wouldn't necessarily have to be a real expert in your field. You just have to have a lot of authority in terms of, people took notice of you. So there's those three different ways you can get in: seniority, authority, and eminence, or you can have some combination. So you could be a small manager with, say, 10 people reporting to you, and you've got some authority in your field. So you can get in on a combination, although it's actually easier to do it on one at a time. So those are the criteria for fellowship. There's not much more to say about fellowship, really. You really have to be at the right level, working either technically at the right level or in management at the right level. And you can't swat up for it, really. It's not something that's a technical skill. It's, as I said earlier at the beginning, it's one of these last two here, leadership and eminence. So you've got to really have gone through the different stages and ended up with leadership and eminence at the end in order to get the FBCS. But there's still plenty of places you can go on the way. We've got the CITP I've talked about. You've got the CEng and CEng I've talked about. And so I think there's plenty of scope for trying out these different levels if you haven't already applied for them. I'm particularly interested in CEng myself, but CITP is also very well respected. And of course, fellowship if you are working at that level. So I think that's about it. I mentioned SFIA levels again. You can look all these things up on the BCS website, and I'm ready for questions now.
There's no questions that have come up on the list, and there is nothing that's come up actually on the chat.
Okay. Well, we can say that's the end if you like.
There are some questions on the chat.
Oh, are there?
Are there?
Yeah.
Where are they?
You just got to drag it up, like go up the list.
So I can't see the list. Whereabouts is?
Oh, I see. There's the twisty at the end.
Yeah.
Whereabouts are the questions?
You go into the questions pane.
Yeah.
Oh, the questions, not the chat.
Yeah, if you expand the window, so in the bottom right corner, you drag it down so you can enlarge it.
Oh, yes, I see.
Yeah.
Well, I've got some general questions here, but I can't see any specific questions.
I can see what part of a question that says if you've already got FBCS,
Need to read them out.
Is the process be different for CEng? Would it be different?
No, it's exactly the same. So it doesn't matter whether you're a member or a fellow, the CEng is the same. Now, I say that because there is a slight difference in as much as if you've got fellowship, probably you'd sail through the management section of the CEng, but that's only because you'd show that in your CV. The actual process is exactly the same, whether you've got FBCS or not, yeah.
There's another question here. I'm not sure which is more appropriate for me, CITP or CEng. Which would you advise me to concentrate on or to help me decide?
Well, it partly depends on the job that you do. If it's an engineering job, so an engineering job is one where you basically design things, you apply engineering methods, and you end up with something you can point at and say, I designed this. It may be a piece of software, of course, but it has to be an end result. If you're in charge of an operation like a call center or something like that, that tends not to be an engineering job, because unless you design the call center in the first place, if you're working in a call center, that's an IT job, but it's not an engineering job. So it partly depends on whether you've got an engineering job. If you haven't, then you can't apply for CEng anyway. If you have, it partly depends on your level of experience. I would say if you've got the degree already and you've got other academic qualifications, you'd probably be easier to get a CEng because you've already got the degree in IT. If you haven't got any qualifications, but you feel you're fairly qualified, you're not qualified, but you've got a lot of experience and knowledge, then possibly the CITP. The CITP, if anything, I would say is a sort of substitute for qualifications more than the CEng. The CEng is more of a demonstration of experience and the ability to apply knowledge. The CITP is more of a substitute for not having the knowledge in the first place, I think. But would you agree with that, Margaret?
Yes, I think so. And if there's no reason why you can't go for both or even all three with the CSI as well. But if you want to go for your eng, so if you think you'll be involved with fairly well committees within Europe, the EUREng could be very useful, and you do have to have that CEng to get that. Sometimes if you work for organizations that are very much in the engineering field, CEng might be slightly better understood, whereas if you work for some area that's much more in the IT sector, those type of companies, maybe CITP might be better viewed. What would you think, Keith?
Yes, I think that's true. And the other thing I should say about the CEng is that I mentioned earlier that the CEng is awarded to people from different institutions like mechanical engineers and civil engineers, and you can sort of overlap a bit more with CEng. I in fact had a degree in electronic engineering, which strictly speaking wasn't in IT, and when I got my original CEng, the fact that I could know about a slightly sideways subject rather than IT didn't matter. So if you've got a job which overlaps several areas of engineering, then certainly the CEng will be better because you can apply through either the BCS or your other, if you've got another institution such as the Institute of Mechanical Engineers, you could apply through them. So that would be another reason.
I don't think there's any other questions. I don't think I can see any.
Okay.
Any other no questions? No? In which case, I think I'd like to say on behalf of everybody that's listened here to Keith, thank you very much. I think this was absolutely brilliant. And it's a wonderful way of actually explaining what is actually quite a complex system of actually going through. I think if anybody wants advice, very often we've had in the past sort of sessions where you can actually come along, certainly to the Hampshire branch, and come up with your draft CVs, draft applications, and get some advice on what areas you might like to work on. So maybe in the future, if there's an interest, we can organise this electronically.
Yes,
but Keith,
maybe.
I'd like to say, would that be all right? So Keith, I'd like to say thank you very, very much. And clap hands.
I'll send you the okay. I'll send you the slides to put up on the website or whatever.
Okay, we'll put them up on
I'll
the
send you a
Hampshire.
PDF of it, Margaret.
All right. Okay, thank you. And I'll ask them to be put up on the Hampshire website.
Okay, fine.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And I'll log off.
Yeah. Joe, can we log people off?
I think probably the organizer will do that, so I'll just leave myself.
Okay. Thank you all very much.